Well, when that call came through, almost lost my mind. Yes, when that call came through, almost lost my mind. Because I strictly understood that you had crossed that line. Roll them bones, roll them bones, roll them bones, roll them bones. I guess there's nothing in this world that can make you stay. Nothing in this world that can make you stay. Oh Lord, I got a word in mind. No matter anyway. Roll them bones, roll them bones, roll them bones.
Mr. Baer, you might ask, what is funny? Well, the gap between self-awareness and the capacity to change is funny. The gap between what you were thinking and what you were saying is funny. The gap between what you say in private but dare not say in public is funny. You don't have to be funny like anyone else to be funny. You don't have to tell jokes to be funny. You don't have to be crass to be funny. And most importantly of all, you don't always have to be funny to be funny.
It was about 8:29 p.m. when Mama finally woke up, her eyes opening as I sat there on the floor watching Lucille Ball on TV try to pronounce Vegemite Vegemin. Vegemina moo, Mama said, reaching over to the coffee table for her cigarettes. Her hair was all mashed down on one side from her nap, and the imprint from the tapestry upholstery material on the couch had left its imprint on one side of her face, producing a series of red-pink swirls on her skin, like someone had attacked her with a Baroque waffle iron. I must have dozed off, sugar, she smiled, running her fingers through her hair like a makeshift comb. Mama maneuvered into a sitting position, and as she did, noticed her torn hose and gravel-scarred knees for the first time. What in the world is this? She said, picking a small pebble fragment from her leg. You fell out of the car, Mama. Miss Beecham called the rescue squad because we all thought you were dead. Doris Beecham? The rescue squad? Well, I guess everybody in this town's run the damn mouth about me tonight, she moaned, walking over to the cabinet where my parents always kept the liquor. Mama opened the door and pulled out an old bottle of scotch. On discovered that it was empty. Next came out an empty bottle of tequila. Vegemita Mida mush, slurred Lucy on the TV, and the effects of the herbal remedies she was hired to advertise obviously more powerful than she had expected. My mother walked over to the gun cabinet, unlocked it, and reached up on the top shelf where the dull red shotgun shells and the smaller brass rifle bullets that tinkled when they touched were kept, to pull out a purple sack with a golden drawstring that held the bottle of Crown Royal. God damn, my mother said to herself upon discovering the bottle held only what appeared to be an eyedropper full of liquor. She held the decanter upside down in her hands and waited for the few precious golden drops to slide down the sides of the bottle like tears in slow motion, her tongue darting into the neck of the container like a lover reaching out to embrace a long-lost paramour. Mama looked around the room like a child playing hide-and-seek before walking over to the old plantation desk that stood near the fireplace. Vegemini mini mo, Lucy croaked in the background as Mama rustled through the drawers. Sugar, Mama said, looking over at me still sitting on the floor. Sugar, I want you to walk down the road to the VFW post and get your mama a fifth of apple brandy, okay? she said, walking over to rub my head. I don't want to, Mama. I'm afraid. It's all dark out, I blurted out, having never walked down the highway before at night. You're a big boy, Sugar. You're almost 8 years old. Tell him to put it on my account. She smiled, squeezing my arm, and I walked from the house, down the driveway, onto the grassy shoulder of the road, stumbling from time to time on rocks and sticks, as it was dark and the moon was hidden by clouds. The old VFW post was across the street from Miss Beecham's store, a yellow one-story building that sat back from the road and featured a large sign next to the front door which read, "Warning, no trespassing. This property is booby-trapped." I walked up to the front door, illuminated by a single bare light bulb, and knocked. Inside, I could hear the sounds of music and laughter, and soon the door opened, revealing paunchy Mr. Gatewood, who was sucking on a gin and tonic. "Well, who are you, little man?" Mr. Gatewood grinned. "I'm Louis. My mama says she wants some Applejack," I stammered. "Hang on," Mr. Gatewood said, walking down the hallway. The VFW stood for Veterans of Foreign Wars, and even though my father had been considered Section 8, not allowed to serve, he was given an honorary membership since he had overseen so many of the organization's pig pickings over the years. "Here you go, young buck," Mr. Gatewood said. "I sure hope your daddy gets out of the hospital soon. He sure knows how to cook a pig." He laughed as he closed the door. I turned and walked back down the lonely road with my brown paper prize, the wind from passing cars whipping my hair into golden froth. I walked back in the house to find Mama on the couch snoring, a half-full bottle of Smirnoff vodka cradled between her thighs as she slept. "Lucy, you got some splaining to do," said Ricky Ricardo on the TV, and I placed the bottle of brandy at her feet like an offering before a pagan deity.
Long ago at school in Boulder, I got to meet some great poets. Ginsberg, Burroughs, Gary Snyder, Richard Hugo, W.S. Merwin, Denise Levantov, Anne Waldman, Delmore Schwartz, Robert Duncan. They all passed through. Then I moved to Hollywood, movie land, and for the next 20 years, poetry was hardly an issue. But now Mr. Baer found himself in North Carolina and decided it was time to reconnect with poetry. Maybe because my first friend I made here was Edward McKay. Ed is not a person. Ed is a used CD and bookstore. And it was there I started hooking back up with Annie Dillard, Wallace Stevens, William Carlos Williams, Arthur Rimbaud, all the old gang. It was also at Edward McKay's that I picked up The Independent, the local weekly, and recently in the Independent sponsored a poetry contest. The theme, Stone Soup. The idea being that we are all part of a larger community. Well, okay, we are. Initially, I was put off by the metaphor, though. I couldn't see Campbell's putting out this brand. Chicken gumbo, alphabet soup, cream of broccoli, stone? I don't think so. I'll stick with chicken noodle. The point was to write a poem about our multicultural community, balm for the human spirit. We're all rocking in the soup together, Okay, I'm human, sort of. So I'd give it a try. But where to start? I just returned from Jamaica, so maybe I could write about that. Juxtapose images of impoverished shanty towns against the lush tropical splendor. Well, a little cliche, okay. So maybe I'd write about Sweetie's Rastafarian conversion at the Bob Marley birthday concert in James Bond Beach. So poetry, go deeper, Mr. Baer, go deeper. Okay, so I'm still in Jamaica, so where to start? So I sit down, and then I've got it. My first poem. This is called The Golden Eye, designed by Clayton. 1 lime fresh. 3 measures unflavored clear syrup, 5 measures Appleton rum, 2 measures Meyer rum, fresh pineapple juice, fresh orange juice, dust with cinnamon, lots of ice, and blend until ice is finely crushed. For added kick, a measure of tequila gold. Well, I thought I had it, but maybe not. So, because Independent, they're pretty serious. So to console myself, I go for the added kick. The tequila, and now I'm starting to feel more sensitive. Stone soup, pebble soup, another sip or two. I tried to find my noble spirit, but alas, I realized Hollywood's ruined me, and I feel an overwhelming urge to entertain. So as much as I want to write about third world babies with swollen bellies and flies and Sally Struthers, I can't. I crave action, a boot kicking in the door, 2 lovers caught in a compromising position, denials, accusations, screams, and an abundant display of exposed flesh. So I write my next poem. He didn't think she would pull the trigger, but she did. The one bullet did it. Lights out, no more breath. She could have stopped then and there. She'd always been economical. But how much did a bullet cost? 7 cents a quarter? Not much. Pow, 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 pow. Ah, she thought. Sometimes going on a spending spree is just what the doctor ordered. Pow, 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 pow.
I found out Al Casey was alive because I got a reissue of a Fats Waller CD, and I was reading the liner notes, and it said, the last surviving member of Fats Waller's Rhythm is Al Casey. My favorite member of Fats' band. In the 30s, Fats became the most popular recording artist on the Bluebird label, which was the Race Records imprint of RCA, because he was just so damn good. He played piano so well. He was so funny, and he could take the worst songs and make them great. He was so good that you didn't notice that he was one of the greatest piano players who ever lived. He took a small band out with him called Fats Waller's Rhythm. A bunch of great players, except the bass player, who wasn't very good, but Fats wanted it that way. Apparently, Fats would go to the engineer, and Fats would go to the bass player and say, Cedric Wallace, and go, "You're great. You're the best bass player I've ever played with. I just think you're the greatest bass player ever." And then he'd go to the engineer and go, "Here's $20. Move the mic away from that guy. Make sure my left hand is louder on the piano." But anyway, I digress. So Al Casey is alive. Al Casey, who played this inimitable chorded solos on his Gibson L5. It sounded like he was handing you a bouquet of flowers every time he took a solo. I loved him. And not only that, I could sort of play like him because it wasn't terribly difficult. It was just so good. So I patterned my playing after Al, talked about Al, ripped him off, and he's alive. So I make the big leap. I look him up in the New York directory. There are several Al Caseys in the New York directory. I figure he's got to be one. So I call. I'm scared to death. Hello. Hello, is this Al Casey? Yes, it is. Are you the Al Casey that played with Fats Waller? Yes, I am. Oh, you're just the greatest of all time. The greatest of all time? Well, so he says, well, why don't you come by and see me? So this is early on in Zipper's career. We go up to New York. Al tells us where he lives. He's on the west side in some entertainer's retirement home. It's kind of a nice place. So Kenny wants to go. Jimbo wants to go. And then our publicist wants to go. And then our publicist wants to take a photographer. Well, whatever. Al meets us at the door. And there he is. I couldn't believe it. But it's a little weird for him because there's a guy taking pictures. He doesn't quite know what to make of the whole thing. But we calm him down when we offer to buy him some beer. Can we go out and get some? Would you like some beer? Oh, yes, that would be very nice. Well, what brand do you like? Beer's my brand. He say he smokes these menthols, So we start talking, and he tells war stories, and he talks about Fats, and we talk about what strings he used to use, and life on the road, and what it was like touring back then, and how Fats wouldn't let him tour with the band until Al showed him a high school diploma, and how he started when he was 16. And then he pulls out the scrapbook, and it's Dorothy Dandridge, and it's Louis Armstrong, and it's Fats' big touring band, signed Boss Man, above Fats Waller's smiling face. Did he smoke pot? No, he never touched the stuff. I couldn't believe it. It was the greatest. We played some shows with him. I found out that RCA never gave Al any of the reissues of his own records. He didn't know they'd been reissued. He didn't have a CD player. I made my record label buy him his entire back catalog. I thought it was shameful that his own record label wouldn't give him his own CDs, even though they mentioned him in the liner notes as still being alive. I went to Epiphone, with whom we had a guitar endorsement. I got a guitar for Al. We got a limo, which was late, drove him down to the Roseland, where we presented him with this guitar. I think he was touched, but not quite sure what to make of it. His son thought that we were cool. I followed him around all the time. You're the greatest of all time. You're the best, Al. Do you remember when you recorded that song in 1942? That song where you took that solo in E flat? No, I don't remember that at all. The first song Al was ever on, they did a practice take, and Al said, "I think I'm ready," and Fat said, "No, son, we just cut it." He didn't remember that shit. I was down in a bathroom and underneath he was peeing in this bathroom. It was underneath a club. And I was doing the usual, "You're the greatest of all time." And he stopped and he turned around and he said, "Will you stop with that shit?" And I said, "Okay." And I did. And then we became friends. I wrote a song about him called "Pallin' with Al." And I ripped off his opening from Buck Jumpin', his signature tune, a little descending 6/9 figure, very sweet. And I wrote all the lyrics about how great Al is. When he gets his right hand pumping, all them kiddies got to start buck jumping. It's kind of a masturbatory creation myth thing. Thought it was kind of cool. So we're playing with Al, and we ask him if he'd like to do the song, and he says he will. And we get up on stage, and he says, "Well, it's in C," and then it does this thing at the button. He's like, just start playing, I'll latch on. And he did. He had it by the second verse. And then, so we threw him a solo after the bridge, and it was great. He played beautifully. He's playing more notey stuff now because he can't, move his hands that quickly. I had to turn around and look at and face the wall. I had to turn away from the audience because tears were streaming down my face.
All the birds up in the trees have got a different song to sing, and it's better now they've learned that swing. They've been palin' with Al.
It's times like these, looking at the same old view, remembering the last time with you, across the wide aisle of Champs-Élysées. Was it September or was it June? But there's truth in the world, isn't there? There's truth in the world, isn't there? Isn't there?
Sometimes you just never know when a party's going to break out. Now, mostly it's just Sweetie and I, but one of the outer peculiarities of growing older is I find myself having these parties by myself. Might start with a drink, then another, and next thing you know, I've got the music blasting and I'm dancing and getting wild. Might find myself bopping around the front yard, wearing only a towel, or not. How embarrassing for a middle-aged white guy to get caught crooning about his homeboys. You either ride with us or you collide with us. But there was one particularly joyous eruption of debauchery in the beginning of September that I feel compelled to share with you. The season was changing. The cosmic stage hands were wheeling out the summer backdrops and rolling in the sets for fall. Summer had come and gone so fast, I felt that I had hardly absorbed it. That evening, I'd gone to bed earlier than usual, but about 4:30, some anxiety woke me up and I couldn't get back down. I slipped on my bathrobe, padded down to the kitchen, grabbed a glass, held it under the ice machine, found the soda water, reached for the industrial-sized bottle of Jack, and poured a stiff one. Sitting in the dark in my favorite chair, Jack went down smoothly. It's about 4:45 now, but I still wasn't ready for sleep. Jack's sequel went down even nicer than the first. Around 5 a.m., whatever anxiety was nibbling at my unconscious had abated. I now should have returned to the sack, but I was feeling too good. Outside, the light was changing. I thought of the scene near the end of The Great Gatsby, where Gatsby in a crisis of clarity, stays up all night and unburdens his soul to Nick Carraway. At dawn, in the gray turning gold, turning light, Gatsby decides he will later take a swim because he hasn't been in his pool all season, and it was to be drained that day. Now, Gatsby was shot and killed and ended up floating upside down in his pool with the autumn leaves floating about him, but I didn't have a pool and there was no deranged husbands after me, and the thought of the changing season and my third jack, now kicking in with both barrels blazing, had transported me into the backyard. I stood in my special scent garden that Sweetie had planted outside my office window and took in the gardenias and jasmine and the tiny white buds of the sweet olive bush that were coming into bloom. They smelled delicious. I became sad at the thought that they might have bloomed and I might have missed them. The moon hadn't dropped and the pale purple sky was just becoming opalescent. In the east, where the first light appeared, the trees remained shrouded in darkness. I thought of my friend Gail Lowry, who paints exquisite landscapes. This was her time of day. This is what Gail could have painted, and I wished I could paint, if for no other reason than to move beyond collecting dead butterflies and calling them ready-made poems. I imagined the orange California poppies in my wildflower garden as Monet abstracts. Then I wondered if my neighbors in back could see me out here plastered like this. Good old Harold and Brenda. They never bothered me about my outdoor speakers, never told me to turn down the music. There was a couple next to them who complained. I decided I'd like to move them out and move in George and Martha from Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. Sure, George was a disappointment and Martha was a lush, and there would be the screaming to put up with, but they would be just winding down for the evening and maybe celebrating the dawn themselves. I could put on music, maybe some Debussy piano improvisations, and we could all finish the party in a civilized way. But that might wake Sweetie up, so instead of music, I strolled down towards the pond. Weaving through the woods, I started to laugh when I caught myself talking to the trees I'd come to know by name. Some time ago, I realized I really had gone native when I began noticing faces in the trees. Once I started looking, I found wood nymphs to be lurking everywhere. I'd see noses and lips and arms reaching out and hair standing on end and an amazing variety of genitalia. At the pond, I imagined my new buddy George was with me. We stared out at the mist and on the water and the ice cubes and our glasses clicking in unison. Now, George in the movie was close to my age now. He was ragtag, melancholy, was wearing that sweater. The burden of broken dreams heavy on his brow, and yet he could still laugh. George was a laugher. He was sad, and it was a grim laugh to be sure, but I didn't mind. When a laugher meets another laugher, it's love. And besides, I knew George was really Richard Burton and Martha was really Liz, so we stood there silently for a while, each pondering the ironies of our existence, till a flock of geese flew overhead, honking, "Hello, geese." When George took off, I prayed, gave thanks, and repeated an affirmation. Yield to bliss, embrace the miracle, cherish the ridiculous, devote to something worthy. Like George, I thought I would have amounted to more by now and been further along, but all the same, it's been a charmed life. I thought of charming people I'd known and charming places and other magical nights meeting the dawn like this. When I returned to the backyard, the sky was lighter than darker. Across the way, my neighbor Ed's horses, Hawkeye and Jonathan, bolted across the field. I perched on a boulder in my wildflower garden and began to notice faces in my flowers. And not just random faces, but the faces of pretty girls. Yellow, blue, pink, every one a beauty. "Hello, ladies." I hadn't planned on a party, but a party it was. Stumbling drunk in my garden at 6 a.m. Just me and the birds and the bees. "Hello, Mr. Bee." And then the dance of the white butterflies.
Trapped at birth, determine what it's worth. We work the most to gain the things we can the least attain. And it's a sad, sad song. We all must sing along. If our fondest wish comes comes true. We only wish for something new. But thank you for everything beautiful, for everything. Thank you. I love you so, I love you so, I love you so, I love you so. Samsara every day to say you're born that way allows you not to see the higher possibility. But thank you for everything beautiful, for everything. Thank you. I love you so, I love you so, I love you so, I love you so.
Blackstone Audiobooks presents Kooks, a new audio novel by M.D. Baer. Dada meets girl is in trouble. The town loses girl. For the exception was the rule. Slay the dragon. The town the girl back. Igor and Ron break into song. There was lost horizon. Might start to dance. Woe to those in the town co. For the exception, we are the rule, and you're not. The town, all say anyone might final. Break into song. Or anyone might start to dance. Every place has become a town anywhere else. For the exception was the rule. America has become a town, one big shop. Anyone might break into song. There was one place where anyone not the might start to dance. All sales are final. Dadaville.